On a miserable, rainy day, I stopped to give a ride to a sad elderly woman at a bus stop. She forgot her purse in my car, but there was no wallet inside, only an old-fashioned house key and a sealed letter in my late grandmother's handwriting. Before we begin, where are you watching from today? And don't forget to subscribe for our daily stories. Now, let's go into the rain. Grief has a geography. For the year since my grandmother Clara died, my world had shrunk to the cramped, often damp corners of my two-bedroom apartment. It was a life of unpaid bills, thrifted furniture, and the steady, low hum of worry that comes with being a single mother barely staying afloat. But the true home of my grief was a ghost, my grandmother's house, a grand old Victorian with a garden she loved and tended. It was the place I spent every childhood summer, the only place I ever felt truly at home. And now it was gone. I can still remember the day, a week after the funeral, like a fresh ache. My uncle, my mother's brother, David, had sat me down at his immaculate mahogany dining table, wearing that practiced look of sorrow. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," he said, sliding a thin envelope toward me. "I've gone through all of Clara's finances. It's not good." He told me there was a second mortgage I hadn't known about, a mountain of debt. After paying creditors, he sighed, playing the part of a man with a heavy burden. "I had to sell the house," he said, tapping the envelope. "This is all that's left." I was too numb to argue. I accepted the check, a tiny, insulting sum, and with it, the story that the last piece of my history had been sold to strangers to cover my grandmother's supposed failures. I believed him. A year later, on a Tuesday, where the rain fell in sheets that matched my mood, I was driving home from my job as a waitress. My old car was coughing and sputtering. I was tired, broke, and on my way to pick up my son from a daycare I could barely afford. Stuck at a red light, I noticed her, an elderly woman at a bus stop with no shelter, the rain plastering her thin gray hair to her head. She struggled with 2 paper grocery bags that were dissolving in the downpour. She looked fragile and dignified, and completely soaked. My first, selfish instinct was to keep driving. I was late. My car was a mess. It wasn't my problem. Then I saw something in her face, the quiet resolve that reminded me of my grandmother, a woman who met the world with calm strength. With a sigh at my own conscience, I pulled over. I rolled down the window and said, "Ma'am, you can't stand out here. You'll catch your death. Please let me give you a ride." For a moment, I watched her in the rain, a lone figure in a vast, indifferent storm. The warmth from doing something kind was a small ember that was quickly swallowed by the reality of my empty wallet and overdue rent. Looking out at the rain-soaked street and the row of rundown houses that made up my neighborhood, I had no idea that this small act, one I had already dismissed as sentimental, would be the beginning of a new chapter. It would, in the most unexpected way, return me to the front door of the home I thought I had lost. She hesitated, then relented. "Well," she said, her voice crisp and refined in contrast to her drenched appearance, "if you're sure, it's no trouble." I lied and said it wasn't at all. My mind was already doing the accounting for the extra time and the fuel I couldn't afford. I helped her and her dissolving bags into the passenger seat of my rattling car. The interior, my son's car seat in the back, and his scattered toys on the floor, suddenly felt shabby next to her quiet dignity. "My name is Evelyn," she said as we pulled away. "Sarah," I replied. "Nice to meet you, Evelyn." The drive to her apartment was quiet and easy. Rain tapped a rhythmic beat on the roof, and we talked. Or rather, she asked, and I answered. She asked with a gentle curiosity that made me feel, for the first time in a long while, seen. She asked about my son, my job, my life. I, someone who had kept most of her struggles private, found myself opening up to this polite stranger. I told her about my grandmother Clara, about the house with its rose garden that had been my childhood sanctuary, and about the pain of losing it. I told her how my uncle David had handled the estate. He'd said my grandmother had debts and had to sell the house to pay them off. It all happened so fast. Evelyn listened, hands folded in her lap, her face a still mask of sympathy. Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable woman, she said. It's a tragedy what happened to her home. When we arrived at her apartment, a clean, modest, well-kept senior building, I insisted on helping carry her groceries to the door. You have a very kind heart, my dear. Just like your grandmother, Clara, she told me. Hearing my grandmother's name so casually from her lips sent a small jolt through me. You knew her? I asked. Evelyn smiled, a sad, nostalgic curve of her mouth. Everyone knew Clara, she replied. She was a force of nature. She thanked me again and disappeared into her apartment, leaving me in the quiet hallway. It wasn't until after I'd picked up my son and returned to my cramped apartment that I noticed her purse on the passenger seat, an elegant, out-of-place dark blue velvet clutch. She'd left it behind. My first thought was frustration. It was across town. I told myself I'd return it tomorrow. But I knew she would be worried, so I opened it, hoping to find an ID or phone number. A small silver clasp popped open to reveal a faded silk lining and almost nothing inside. No wallet, no phone, no ID. Only a heavy, old-fashioned brass key, the kind that fits a very old, sturdy door, and beside it, a thick cream envelope, formally sealed. My breath caught. The envelope wasn't addressed to Evelyn. It was addressed to me, to Sarah. The handwriting was unmistakable. My grandmother Clara's precise, elegant cursive. I stared, my heart pounding. It shouldn't have been possible. Clara had been gone over a year. Yet here was her hand on paper, my name written as she had written it for decades. My hands shook as I broke the wax seal. I had the sense that I wasn't opening a simple letter, but a time capsule, a final, carefully arranged gift from my grandmother. With my chest tight and my pulse racing, I unfolded the heavy paper and began to read. My dearest, dearest Sarah, the letter began. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and my world is a little less bright for me. But you are not gone. You, my brave, wonderful, and much underestimated granddaughter, are the reason for this letter. I write to you as a warning, a gift, and a last secret plan. I had to stop for a moment, my eyes stinging with grief and love. Then I read on. I know your heart, and I know my son, your Uncle David. He is a good man in his own way, but he is weak, a man too easily seduced by the promises of money. I fear, with a mother's certainty, that after I am gone, his weakness and greed will lead him to do a great and terrible wrong to you. My blood ran cold. It felt like she was in the room, recounting the exact pain of the past year. She will tell you I was in debt. He will say he was forced to sell our house to pay creditors. He will offer you a small, insulting check and a performative sigh that it is all that remains. This, my dearest Sarah, is a lie. A single hot tear blurred the page as I read. My grandmother's words continued, clear and firm. I have no debts. My home is paid off, free and clear. It is the most valuable and cherished asset I own. I will not leave it to him. He would sell it in a heartbeat and squander the proceeds on something foolish and flashy. And I cannot leave it directly to you, my darling. Because I know him, I knew he would find a way to manipulate you, to guilt you into handing control over, to sell it for his own selfish ends. So she wrote, I have done something unconventional, a final, secret, and I hope, very wise move on the family chessboard. I have transferred the deed to my home in a legally airtight and completely private way to the one person in this world I trust as much as I trust you, my oldest, dearest, and most loyal friend, Evelyn. Evelyn, the kind, elegant, rain-soaked woman at the bus stop, had been given my grandmother's house along with strict instructions: seek out my granddaughter, but not as a friend, meet her as a stranger, observe the woman she's become, test her character. If she found that the girl my grandmother raised, compassionate, decent, and kind, still existed, then Evelyn was to hand over this letter and this key. I looked at the heavy brass key that had fallen onto my lap. The key to the house I'd believed was sold to strangers. Suddenly, the rain-soaked encounter, the gentle conversation, Evelyn's knowing expressions, none of it felt like coincidence. It had been a deliberate, quiet test arranged by my brilliant grandmother from beyond the grave. My Uncle David hadn't merely mismanaged the estate. He'd lied and schemed, actively trying to steal my inheritance for the past year. Where grief had lived, a cold, satisfying anger now took root. My grandmother had not only given me a home, she'd given me a mission and an ally in Evelyn. She'd set me up for one last consequential fight. Holding the key, my first move wasn't vengeance, it was reclamation. I drove across town to the tree-lined street I'd avoided for a year because seeing it hurt too much. Parked across from the house, I stared. It stood exactly as I remembered. A proud, slightly overgrown Victorian, the rose bushes untamed but alive, the porch swing still hanging. It was my time capsule. My heart raced as I walked up the path. The brass key turned with a familiar click. The door opened. Inside, the air was still and cool and smelled unmistakably of her. Lavender, old books, and the faint sweetness of apple pie. I moved through rooms covered in dust sheets, trailing my hand over the chair she'd favored. Standing in the sunlit kitchen where I'd loaned to bake. I cried, not from sorrow, but from a profound, overwhelming sense of homecoming. Standing in my grandmother's living room, I called my uncle. He picked up on the second ring, impatient as always. "Sarah," he said, "what is it? I'm in a meeting." "Sure," I replied, my voice calm and steady, a tone he didn't recognize. "Quick question about Grandma Clara's house." He sighed, dismissive. "We've been over this. The house was sold to pay debts. It's gone. You need to move on." I couldn't help the small, cold smile that spread across my face as I looked around the sunlit room. "Funny," I said, "for a house that was sold a year ago. It's in remarkably good condition." Silence answered me, a delicious silence that smelled of panic on the other end. I let it sit. The sound of a liar's mind scrambling for a way out was almost audible. "What are you talking about? How did you get in there?" "That's breaking and entering," he sputtered. "It's not breaking and entering," I said. "It's using a key. The key given to me by the legal owner of the property." I let the words settle. "You lied to me, David. There were no debts. The house was never sold. Grandma left it to someone she trusted." "Who?" he demanded. "A lovely woman named Evelyn, my grandmother's oldest friend." I moved to the front window and looked out. "I'm meeting the owner and our lawyer in about 10 minutes to have the deed formally signed over to me, as per Grandma's clear final wishes. You'll be hearing from my lawyer in the morning about the inheritance you stole." I hung up. The silence in the living room felt absolute and pure. The echo of my uncle's panicked voice lingered for a heartbeat, then dissolved into sunlight. The lie was dead. I was home. Not long after, a car pulled up. Evelyn arrived, not as a stranger but as a co-conspirator and friend, carrying a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "Your grandmother," she said, eyes bright with satisfaction, "always did love a well-executed plan. This calls for a celebration." We sat on the same worn sofa where I had listened as a child, and Evelyn filled in the rest. She told me about 60 years of friendship with my grandmother, a bond forged in hard times and mutual respect. She explained my grandmother's love for me and her growing disappointment in her son's weakness and greed. She had seen this moment coming and had prepared for it. Evelyn handed me a thick folder. Legal documents, the signed deed, and explicit final instructions. My grandmother hadn't simply left me a house. She had left a legal fortress. The paperwork was ironclad. My uncle's attempts to challenge it were doomed. True to form, David tried to fight. He hired lawyers, leveled accusations of conspiracy and undue influence, and raged. But his bluster couldn't overcome the careful legal work my grandmother had arranged. He was outmaneuvered and ultimately ruined, not just legally, but in reputation. The small fortune he'd hoped for evaporated beneath mounting legal fees. He retreated, defeated. His greed cost him more than money. It cost him the last of the family's respect. My vindication, though, wasn't in his downfall. It was in rebuilding. 3 months later, on a sunny Saturday, I wasn't living in a damp, cramped apartment. I was in my grandmother's garden. The roses were thriving under my care, bright and fragrant, Proof that some things survive in Slinish. Nye's son laughed as he chased a butterfly across the lawn. Evelyn sat beside me on the porch swing. Now more than a friend or conspirator. She was family. We talked about the future. Paint colors for the kitchen, what vegetables to plant next spring, and the ordinary, comforting work of building a new life. I had walked into a storm, lost, grieving, struggling, and a simple act of kindness for a stranger had led me home. My grandmother hadn't just given me a key to a house. She'd given me the key to my future. I was finally ready to open the door. If this story touched you, a grandmother's foresight and a granddaughter's steady strength, tell us what you think of the test and the plan in the comments. If you were moved, please like and subscribe for more stories like this, and click the notification bell so you don't miss the next upload. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.